Before Abraham was, I am. These words are often misapplied to teach that Jesus existed before Abraham did. However, closer investigation reveals the opposite to be true. Jesus does not say, before Abraham was, I was. He was the promised descendant of Abraham. We make a nonsense of God's promises to Abraham if we say that Jesus physically existed before the time of Abraham. The context of John chapter 8, verse 58 is Christ's discourse with the Jews concerning Abraham. As far as they were concerned, Abraham was the greatest man who would ever live. Jesus is saying, I am now, as I stand here, more important than Abraham. As they stood there, Jesus was the one to be honored rather than Abraham. He is saying, I am now more important than Abraham ever was. It is possible to understand before in John chapter 8 verse 58 with some reference to time, in the sense that before Abraham existed, Christ had been in God's plan right from the beginning of the world. It was because Jesus was before Abraham in this sense that he was before him in terms of importance. Proof of this is found in John chapter 8 verse 56. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. The only time Abraham is recorded to have laughed and be glad was when he was given the promise that he would have a seed. He understood that ultimately that promise had reference to Jesus. Genesis chapter 17 verse 17. Abraham saw ahead to Christ through the promises made to him concerning Jesus. He symbolically referred to the future sacrifice of Jesus. In the mountain of Yahweh it shall be seen. Genesis chapter 22 and verse 14. It was in this sense that Jesus speaks of Abraham having seen him. It is in this context of speaking about the promises that Jesus could say, before Abraham was, I am. He delighted that God's promises to Abraham were revealing the plan about Jesus which God had known from the beginning of the world. That purpose which had been before Abraham was had been revealed to Abraham in the promises to him, and was now being fulfilled in the eyes of the Jews of the first century as they stood in a ring around Jesus, the word of promise made flesh. It is often claimed that Jesus is alluding to the divine name when he says, I am. Well, Jesus and indeed ordinary men can carry the name of God without this meaning that they are God himself in person. However, it is worth noting that Yahweh, the divine name, really means I will be, who I will be. Exod chapter 3 verse 14. See the marginal reference if you've got one in your Bible. Rather than I am that I am. Even if this verse were intended to be read as an allusion to the divine name, this is not proof that Christ was claiming to be very God. The divine name declared, I will be what I will be. The name was a prophetic declaration of the divine purpose. Jesus Christ was God manifest in the flesh. 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16. The word, Logos, made flesh. John chapter 1 verse 14. As such, he was the expression of the divine character, full of grace and truth, and became the firstborn among many brethren. Romans chapter 8 verse 29. Christ was the result of the Word made flesh, not the originator of the divine plan. As he himself said, I proceeded forth and came from God, neither came I of myself, but he sent me. John chapter 8 verse 42. Thank you. Bye bye.